Hey, this is Russell again, and during today's interview, you guys are going to be introduced to a living legend, someone that I'm so excited to bring into this training for you guys. You will hear about this deeper as we get in the interview. This is probably, of all the interviews, one of my most favorite ones, because Myron Golden is one of the most amazing people I've ever met, and we had so much fun during this interview and just goofing off and going back and forth. And I kind of initially asked him to share a couple of things, but he went deep on a whole bunch of things. I hope you guys enjoy it. The main things I wanted him to talk about, number one was the concept that I learned from him called the price marinade. And I'll talk about it here in a second. And then number two was called the repitch. But then he started going into like preacher closing and a whole bunch of other stuff. Like preacher closing is similar to trial closes if you watch the trial closing presentation yet, but it's the next level. Trial closing is me saying like, is this making sense? Are you guys getting this? Like getting people to say yes. What Myron does is the next level of that, where he tries to get other people to actually give him the presentation back. So he'll say things, well, I won't ruin the surprise. He'll share how he does his preacher closing, but it's amazing, and it's something I haven't mastered yet. But after doing this interview, it got me really excited to go back and start implementing into my presentations as well. So the other things I'll talk about. So number one, I'm going to talk about this. We talked about this in most of these bonus videos. Is your presentation timeline, right? So here's the timeline of your presentation. You've got your one thing, your 3 secrets, your stacking, your close, and those things like that, right? Now right here in the very beginning of the presentation is where you can plug in a price marinade. Sorry, PM. This is the price marinade that Myron will be talking about. The first time that I did the price marinade correctly was at the 10x event, and you hear me talk about it in the initial trainings. But the price marinade is all about like figure out what you're going to sell and giving it the value of it's worth, and like having people get the sticker shock up front of like, oh my gosh, like I can't afford that, right? And so they kind of put it on the shelf, but then you start teaching and start indoctrinating and telling the stories and breaking their false belief patterns, and all these things are happening in the timeline. And the whole time as they're listening to you as you're going through this timeline, they're trying to figure out in their mind like, how could I pay for that? How could I pay for that? And trying to figure out, if I move my money from here to here, and like in their mind they're figuring out how they could do it. And then you come back with the actual price at the end, which is less. And then they've been like, let's say you've marinated the price at $10,000. The whole time in their head there's 10 grand, 10 grand. All of a sudden you're like, oh, it's only 3. It's like, oh, I could totally do 3, right? But the price marinade works because you set up front, you give them the sticker shock, you rip that off immediately at the very beginning, and then you come back later, and then you drop the price down. So the price marinade, he'll talk about the strategy, how it works, like how you developed it, those kind of things, number one. Okay, then the preacher closing will be happening all throughout. You guys can weave that in with your trial closes you learned from the Ted Thomas interview. And the last thing we talked about is the concept of a repitch. So repitch, luckily for me at Grant Cardone's event, they allowed me to do a repitch, right? So I spoke the very first time, did my presentation, we sold a bunch of sales, and then the next day I had a chance to come back and do I think he gave me like 6 minutes to do a repitch, which is me kind of trying to do one more push to get people through. And if you look at like the timeline of how we sell things, right? Things start out initially, we try to sell through emotion, right? So I'll put a big E here. Emotion is usually the first close. So if you look at our core presentation, it's an emotional argument, right? I'm trying to emotionally sell somebody. And then the majority of our buyers come from the emotional close. But then there's a lot of people there who emotionally, they felt it, but they have to logically convince themselves, right? Like, and so that's the next wave of people who come to buy, are the people who are trying to logically buy something. And so what happens is for the repitch, I come back and I usually make an appeal to people's logic. Like logically, it makes sense that if you want to do this in your business, like I'm the person to learn from. Logically, it makes sense that if you're gonna try to 10x your company next 10 months or 12 months, logically you need something bigger than just like, changing your sales script, right? You need more leads, more traffic, more things. Then so a funnel's the thing. Logic. So I'm talking logically to the logical person who the night before emotionally wanted to buy it, but they logically talk themselves out of it. I'm trying to logically talk them back into it, right? And then the third phase then in selling is US, urgency and scarcity. So when I'm selling anything, this is for any kind of presentations. I'm starting emotion. That's my best shot at selling someone, moving to logic, and then ending with urgency and scarcity, right? So in an event, a physical event, I go and I do my presentation, which is all these things will be weaved into the presentation, but for the most part, this is an emotional sell. And then the next sell, so the repitch, I came back the next day and I made a logical and urgency and scarcity, right? If you look at the repitch, it was like, logically you need this stuff and you got to buy it right now because I'm leaving in 2 hours. If I don't have your order form, it's gone, right? So I'm appealing to logic and urgency and scarcity, which for us drove another $250,000 in sales at the 10x event. At our Funnel Hacking Live event, I did my initial presentation, and Myron will share the numbers with you during the interview, but we did around $4 million in sales. He came back the next day and did a logical repitch, and during the logical repitch, and we brought in urgency and scarcity, he did another $3 million in sales doing the repitch, okay? So that's called the repitch over here. TCH. In fact, what we're going to be doing, which is kind of exciting, he allowed me to do this, is I'm going to take his 30-minute presentation from Hacking Live. I'm actually going to plug it into the interview, so you'll have a chance to see him actually do it, and you'll see how did he do $3.5 million in 30 minutes. Like, you'll see how he did it, and notice as you do that, like, how did he appeal to? I mean, he talked emotionally as well, but he's also appealing to logic and urgency and scarcity in this presentation, right? So that I'm plugging that part from Hacking Live into this interview, which is insanely cool. But then I also want you to think, and some of you guys again are not going to be using this to sell on stages. You're going to be doing webinars. So in a webinar sequence, right? I promote people to get on my webinar. I do my webinar, which is an emotional close, okay? And then I can do a repitch on a webinar sequence too. So some of them maybe this is the live webinar, and then maybe I do a replay on day 2, and then let's say on Saturday or Sunday, I'm going to go and appeal to people's logic, right? So I do another video, logic and urgency and scarcity. So I do another video somewhere in that sequence is pushing logic, urgency, and scarcity. So when you watch the training I'm doing in this product about the webinar timeline, we'll show you guys where that fits in. But the repitch also happens web-based just as well, if not better, than at a live event, okay? It's just happening in the sequence. So the webinar's on Thursday, replays on Friday, Saturday, maybe Sunday is where I do my repitch. That's going to be focused on logic, urgency, and scarcity to close down the sales at the very end. And so this concepts will work in so many ways. So have fun with Myron learning price marinade, the preacher closes, the repitch, and a whole bunch of other amazingness, and then actually watch the man in action. You'll see him do over $3 million in 30 minutes. Hope you guys enjoy this presentation. Enjoy the interview. Myron is the man, and I'm excited to introduce him to you right now. Hey everyone, it's Russell Brunson. I want to welcome you to the training for today. I am here with one of the most amazing closers on webinars and stage presenting that I've ever seen in my life. He's someone who recently, after I thought I took every dollar out of a room, stood up on stage for 30 minutes the next day and pulled another $3.5 million out of the same people for the same program. He is someone who I look up to and respect more than almost anybody else on this planet. His name is Myron Golden. Myron, how you doing, man?
I'm utterly fantastic and better now that I'm talking to RB, the triple profits maker.
Oh, man.
I just made that up, by the way.
That'd be the new name?
Yeah, I just made that up. RB, the triple profit maker.
I'm going to buy the domain. I like that. It's good. So to jump off, for those who don't know you, do you want to kind of give a real quick recap of your journey into this world and how you got to where you are right now?
Yeah, I got started in network marketing back in 1985. My first job that I ever got after I got married was driving a trash truck for $6.25 an hour. I did that during the day, came home, took a nap, then went out and sold financial services at night. And to encourage people, like there are a lot of people who are watching this, I'm sure, who are not that great at sales right now. But I promise you, if you will be willing to stay bad long enough to get good, like stay in the process, even though you're not good at it, you can eventually become great at sales. I was horrible. When I first got started selling financial services, Russell, as hard as this might be for you to believe, it literally took me 18 months to make my first sale. And I was working. It wasn't like 18 months of just sitting back waiting to get paid. No, I was talking to people almost every day, and just I didn't understand what was going on in the whole sales process. But guess what happens when you do that many presentations over that long a time period? You take the feedback, and then you go back and you do it again, and you change your approach and you do it again. And I kept doing that until I made a sale. And then I made another one. Then I made a bunch more. Then I became the #1 salesperson in our office. And I eventually got to the place where selling became as easy as falling down the steps.
It's fascinating. All the people I've been interviewing for this, all people I respect at this level now, all of them have a similar story where like it was hard at first. They kept doing it, but it was repetition that they got people success. Like Jamie Cross, I don't know if this story she told me the other day was cool. She was like out at farmer markets every single day, all summer long, selling her soap. And she was like doing them in demos. And like every time someone says something, she remembered that and write notes of it and like changing the pitch and changing the pitch and changing it. Like for 3 years doing that farmers markets. And then she stepped up and did a webinar and it worked. And people are like, oh, your overnight success story. It's like, no, I was like at a farmer market every single day learning this. You went through the same process doing financial services. And like, it's fascinating how I think we all think it's just going to be like, oh, but like to really master it, it does take the repetition and the time to kind of.
Absolutely.
So that's amazing. Now, the first time we met, Dagan Smith and I were doing an event out in
Washington, D.C.
Yeah. And so we were sitting there and this is leading to the very first thing that I want to pick your brain on because it's since I learned it, it made me a ton of money. But we were sitting there and Dagan leaned over, asked a question of you, and you were shyly in the back taking notes, and I didn't know anything. And all of a sudden, you stand up and you walk to the front of the room, and you have this presence where you're just like, and you start talking and start teaching, and you taught this concept you call the price marinade. and you just went through this whole thing, and then you walked back down, sat down, and I was like, oh my gosh, he paid us to be in this room. Like, I should be paying him for that thing he just gave me. That was like one of the most amazing.
Never too late. Never too late. Did you like that? That's called a close.
There's another close for you. But you want to talk, so the price marinade, so like, you told me that, and then I didn't dare do it for like, I don't know, 4 or 5 years because it scared me, intimidated me. I was like, that, I don't have the guts for that. And then the very first time I did it, as you know, was at the 10X event. And I was so scared. I built out the slides. I had them there. I was practicing in my hotel room. And I was about to, that moment we have to like download your slides to USB drive to get to the dude who's going to put it on the screen. So like, and I was like about to copy it over. And I was like, I'm going to delete these slides. I don't dare to do it for all these people. And I was going to I highlighted them. I was like, and then I was like, I'm just going to do it. Like whatever. And I didn't copy slides over, gave it to the guy. He ran out the door to go put it in. And I was like, I'm going to do the price marinade in front of all these people. And it could go really bad or really good. But when you talk about, I don't know, like maybe where you came up with it, but like I love the history behind it. You came up with it and then how you use it so people can start using it in their presentations.
Yeah. So I just realized that when people are listening to us do a presentation, they're thinking about something, right? And they're usually analyzing during every part of the process of our presentation whether or not they're going to buy at the end, right? And so I thought, wow, what if I build up all of this? What if I give them a price up front that is going to be ultimately higher than the final price I'm going to charge them, right? Because everybody loves the deal. So even before I get there, one of the things I'm going to say about selling anything is if you want to make a lot of money in sales, you got to learn to work with human nature instead of working against it. And a lot of people have this vested interest in being right? So they want to be right. Well, I'm not going to do that because that's not blah, blah, blah. Or they've got all this conversation going on in their head. But the reality is human nature says people love a deal. Well, if people love a deal and that helps them buy, why would I not create a deal so it makes it easier for them to say yes? So everything that I'm doing in my presentation is to lead to the easy yes. I want it to make it easy for them to say yes, right? So that's a thought in my mind. That's where I'm at. So people love a deal. So that's what the price marinade is based on.
Mm-hmm.
So I look at the fact they're going to be thinking about something while I'm presenting. If I can uncover enough value in this presentation, because most people misunderstand sales. I was just speaking to like 500 people down here in this hotel in London, right? And so I was telling them most people think that selling is talking people into buying things they don't want, don't need, or can't afford. That's not selling. Selling is uncovering the value of what we have to offer so well that people are happy to exchange the money they have in their pocket for the value we've revealed. So get good at uncovering the value. So I said, if I can like give them a price that's bigger than the final price is going to be of the offer, and then I can uncover enough value during my presentation that it at least matches this price, this big price that I give them at the beginning, then when I finally give them the deal price at the end, if it's lower than the marinade price, and the reason I call it a marinade is because I give them this big price and I let it soak in. I let that big price soak in. I want them thinking the whole time I'm doing a presentation, where can I get this money? I want to give them so much value in the presentation, thinking, okay, well, I can move some money from over here and get that. And then by the time I give them the price, it's lower than that. Like, oh, I got that much in my wallet. Let me go buy this thing, right? So that's the whole mentality behind the price marinade. It's marinating. They're marinating where they're going to get the money from, because you're going to stack and pack so much value into the presentation and what you're teaching them that by the time you get done, they already know they want to get it. They just need to figure out where to get the money.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
So good. The first time I tested, I did it wrong. You told me later I did it wrong, but I got close to this was when we did our old certification thing, and I price marinated for the actual price it was at the end. So I totally messed it up. But I was like, I told them the program's $10,000 to get started. Then the rest of my presentation was to show them a whole bunch of different ways that they could make $10,000 with one client.
That's price marinade.
There's like, if I see one client is free, and then also 10,000, which seemed like a huge number at the beginning, by the end was like, oh,
it's nothing. Peanuts.
Yeah. So that's so exciting. Very, very cool. Now, you use it not only just like in a 90-minute presentation though, because you do events that are multiple days. How do you use it in an event like that, where it's not just like beginning and end, but it's the whole storyline is weaving for more than a day?
Yeah, so the price marinade can manifest itself in a couple of different ways. You can price marinate the retail price over the sales price, right? You can price marinate the bonuses, and then the bonuses that you're going to give them, like really uncover the value of those bonuses and what they're going to get out of those bonuses. And then when you do the offer and the offer is less than the price of the bonuses and you throw the bonuses in for free, that creates an explosion of sales. It just goes insane when you price marinate the bonuses. So you actually tell them the price of the bonuses, the retail price of the bonuses, and then when you do your presentation and they're thinking about having to buy all these different things, and by the time you get down, you do your stack and the walk down, when you go, it's this, 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 and this, and this, but I'm going to give you a discount because of this, and then you get down to the bottom, and you say, okay, everybody gets this, I'm going to throw in these bonuses that are the thing they already want anyway. That's another way to do the price marinade. Another way to do the price marinade is the selection close. I like to save that close, that price marinade, for a multi-day event where I'm selling something that's $25,000, $35,000, $50,000, $100,000, right? I save that price marinade. I call it the selection close because one of the things I discovered, if you think of, I don't think of selling as hard, but a lot of people do. So if you think, so one of the best ways for you not to have to ask them to pay you is you get them to ask you if they can buy. So what do I mean? So at the beginning of an event where I know I'm going to sell a high price program, on the first day, I'll say, I've got a program that, it's not cheap. It's a little bit less than a house. Well, a little bit less than some houses, or, it's less than a car. Well, it depends on the car. It's definitely less than an S550. That's less than a Lamborghini. So I'll paint a picture and I'll say, I've got this training that I'm going to do. Like if I were price marinating my speaker training, for instance, I would say I've got the speaker training that is regularly, we'll just say $53,000, right? And I'll teach you how to sell from stage. People say, well, that's a lot of money. Well, then I would tell them stories about clients of mine who made way more than that the first event, right? So I'm price marinating that big price. And then what I do is I tell them, I say, here's what you do. I want you to write me an essay. If you want to be selected by me and you want me to help you make $300,000 in a weekend, like I just helped one of my students do. If you want me to help you make $100,000 in a weekend, like I just helped one of my students do. If you want me to help you make like $5 million in a weekend, like I helped one of my students do, then I want you to write me an essay. It can be a paragraph. It can be a page. I don't want it to be more than a page, front and back. That's the most. And I want you to tell me why I should select you, because I'm not working with everybody in this room. And so I know on a premium product like that, usually about 10% of the room is going to be max. It'll usually be more like 8% of the room if I'm selling like a $50,000 program. Mm-hmm. So I'll tell them, I say, I want you to convince me that I should let you take this program, because I don't want to sell it to somebody who's not going to do it. I don't need your money, and you don't need to spend the money if you're not going to do the work. So if you think that you deserve to work with me and have one of the best stage presenters, stage closers in the world teach you how to make hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars an hour, then write me an essay, make sure it's turned in today. If you turn it in tomorrow morning, you're already disqualified yourself. Right? And so I have people come and give me that. So that's how I price marinate that. Now watch what I do the next day. I read all of them that night, and the next day I'll call people up in front of the room and get them to sell me in front of everybody else on why I should select them. Commitment to consistency, right? And so people come up and say, well, the reason you should select me is because I'm going to blah, blah, blah. Well, on a scale of 1 to 10, how serious are you? Oh, I'm so serious, I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Like, see, some people are not coachable. And I'll say this, some people are not coachable. They pretend to be coachable. They think they're coachable, but they're really not coachable. On a scale of 1 to 10, how coachable are you? Let me help you understand what that means. If I say drop everything and meet me in Tampa, Florida 3 days from now, you drop everything and meet me in Tampa, Florida 3 days from now, that's 10. Like if I tell you to do something and you say, well, I don't know, that's somewhere below a 5. So like, how coachable are you? And I get them to make commitments to me in front of everybody. Okay, well, you know what? You really did good in the interview. Your essay was great. You are definitely being considered, but I'm not making you any promises. Right? And so I'll do that with a couple of people. I will have people coming to me, begging me to let them be a part of my program. And when I accept them, and when I accept them into the program, they come to me thanking me in tears. Mm-hmm. So that's how I use the price marinade on a multi-day event. But I save that one for like something's going to be if I'm selling something that's going to be $25, $35, $45, $55,000, $100,000, I'd use that price marinade.
Yeah. It's interesting. As you were talking, I was thinking about just other places I've seen this successfully that I didn't even think about was actual price marinade till now. But if you go to UPW, Tony Robbins' event, it's funny because the very first day he talks about, his clients. I got one client pays me $1 million a year for less than an hour a day, 1 hour a month on the phone, and $1 million a year, but it's worth it to him because he talks about his $1 million client so many times throughout the thing. Mm-hmm. And then when he comes back and asks you for $85,000 to join his platinum group or $10,000 to do Master University, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm getting way more than an hour a month of Tony. I'm not paying the $1 million everyone else is paying, right? And when it comes back down to that,
price marinade.
It's so good. Okay, so price marinade is huge. So again, the first time I used it at scale was at the 10x event, where what the price was going to be before I dropped it down, $11,552. I brought that up at the very beginning, and then I had everybody commit to it that if I was able to prove to them this was the way, that they had to give me $11,000, and everybody committed to it. And then Kaylin did my webinar. She rewrote her stories. She did the same thing. She's like, my goal of this webinar is for you to give Russell $11,552. Because every time I give him money, we 4x it or 6, whatever the number they figured it was. And anyway, it's one of those things and I'm curious on your thoughts, because I was scared to death through the first time, and now I don't think I'll ever speak without doing it. Because it sets up. But for someone who's scared of it, what are your thoughts? What do you tell someone who's I don't know if I have the guts to do that? Because I needed Myron sitting there coaching me when I almost deleted those slides. I'm sure other people are going to as well.
You know what's really interesting about that, Russell, is the fact that's why we have coaches. A good coach, understand this, a good coach is always going to coach you in a direction that is counterintuitive to you. Mm-hmm. If it made sense to you, you'd already be doing it. Mm-hmm. Like Annie Grace, Annie, she's in the inner circle. She took my speaker training, right? Russell, she was like, but Myron, I just don't, I got this thing about money. I know you do, but I'm going to help you with that. And I was like, so we were both speaking at Brandon and Kaylin's event, right? We were speaking at Lady Boss Live. And she says, Myron, I got my event coming up. You have any tips for me? Sure. What are you selling? She said, well, I'm not really planning on selling anything. You're not planning on selling anything? I was like, call the doctor. I'm going to have a heart attack, right? And she said, no, I'm not really.
Why do you hate your customers so bad? You're not going to sell them anything.
Yeah, exactly. I said, Annie, you can't teach a kid to ride a bike at a seminar. If you think you're going to change their lives in 2 days, you are a legend in your own mind and nowhere else. If you don't sell them something, you are sending them out to all the wolves that can't really help them. You're forcing them to spend their money with those people. And they're coming to you hoping that you will provide for them and that you will protect them by giving them an opportunity to work closely with you and the strategies that you've created. That's why they're coming to your event. It would be an absolute horrible disservice for you not to sell something to them. And I told her, I said, worst case scenario, Annie, worst case. If you'll just trust me. I know it doesn't make sense. Trust what I know. Don't trust what you believe. Don't trust what you feel. Trust what the coach knows. If you will do this, this is what's going to happen for you. You should do on the low end. If you're horrible, and you're not horrible, because I've seen her present, she's great, right? She's great on stage. I said, Annie, here's the deal. If you will do everything I showed you to do in these 2 days, I promise you the worst case scenario, you'll do $1,000 a head. You'll make $1,000 for every person in that room. Best case scenario, you'll make $5,000. Well, she didn't make $5,000. She had 178 people, and she did over $300,000 in sales. She wasn't going to sell anything. She created as a direct result. She already had her workbook. This was 2 weeks before her event. We're at Lady Boss Live. She comes the next week, and she says, well, this is what I have laid out. What do you think I should do? Well, I wouldn't do it that way. She threw her entire program that she had in the trash and recreated a totally new coaching program that she's going to sell for $6,000. She was so apprehensive about, you could see the anxiety every time she talked about selling it to these people. Because as I know, she doesn't have a make money offer.
Yeah.
Right? And she teaches people how to quit drinking. People who drink like drinking. I wonder how I quit drinking today. Right? And so you talk about a hard offer. That's one of the toughest offers in the world. But she trusted the coach's perspective above her own perspective, and guess what happened? $300,000. So here's what I'd say. There's only two groups of people you're hurting. You're hurting yourself if you don't use this thing. You're hurting yourself if you don't price marinate. That's number one. And you're hurting the people that would love to buy from you, but you just haven't given them enough reasons.
So cool.
That's my rant.
Myron's rant. Oh, so good. All right, so price parity, that's the first piece. Now, the second piece I want to talk to you about, and this is something like just in the last like 6 months, 8 months, you become famous for it. I don't know if you knew it on purpose, but so obviously Funnel Hacking Live, I came and did my presentation selling our high-end coaching program and did really well. Like I can't
really well.
You probably
422 sales.
Your
You
number
did 422 sales on Friday night. I remember
422 sales.
You did 422 sales. Yeah, I remember.
So like
that
at 18,000 a piece. So like that's
at 18,000 a piece. That's ginormous. The offspring of gigantic and enormous. Ginormous.
The ginormous thing. So I'm trying to put you guys in perspective. So like that was like the biggest close I've ever done ever. And I was just like, oh my gosh, everyone who's going to buy bought. And then I can't remember if it was that night or night before, somewhere at the event, I'm like, hey, Myron, do you want to come on stage the last day with me? And like, there's this thing that's called a repitch, right? And I'm going to talk about this because we also use them in webinars now. We use them like we're using it in all selling aspects now. And I was supposed to do a webinar, like a repitch, but I didn't really have time to structure a plan. And I didn't really know what to do. I'd never done it before. And that's when I asked Myron, I'm like, do you want to come on stage with me and help me with the repitch? And that was about all the planning we went into it with.
Yeah, it was, very impromptu. It was very impromptu.
And so we got back on stage, and I'll tell kind of the aftermath, and we'll go into like what actually happened. But you got on stage for basically 30 minutes, told some stories, and then how many more people ended up signing up for the program afterwards?
214.
Which is insane. And
yeah, and that was like $3,852,000 in 30 minutes.
Ish. And what's crazy about it, like I had one of my best friends who's been with me for like 10 years who didn't buy for me, and then he bought when Myron spoke. Myron then did this at Dana Derek's event, and I remember Dana came up to me after Myron did the repitch and came up to me and was like, dude, my mom bought for Myron. My mom didn't buy for me, but she bought for me. And so there's something there that's happening, and I kind of understand, but not super well. We're going back into all of our webinars now. We do the webinar live, and then there's structurally in my brain, there's a repitch that's happening in a different sequence later because it's like the power of it's so strong. I would love for you to talk about just some of like kind of the concept and what's happening where I'm selling day one, the repitch is happening day two. And then like when you were doing that and kind of doing the stories, like how do you think through it? Or what are you trying to do during the repitch?
So the people who are there who didn't buy, here's the presupposition that I'm operating from. The people who are there who haven't bought wanted to buy. So when I think of selling, I think of it's a selling, especially to a group, is a 4-stage process, but even individually. So the first thing I want to do is I want to get them to enroll, right? Enroll in what? I want them to get to enroll, which means agree with learning the way I teach. And I teach with a lot of interaction. So that's the first thing. I want to enroll them in interaction. So the second thing I want to do is I want to get them to engage. And that is keeping them responding. The best way in the world to make sure, the best way to give a presentation is to get your prospect, whether one-on-one or to a live audience, get your prospect to give your presentation to themselves. Because if I say it, they can disagree with me. But if they say it, they can't disagree with themselves without being schizophrenic. If I say it, right, they can hear me or might not hear me. But if they say it, they have to hear them. So I get them to say what I want them to hear.
How do you do that?
Make sense?
Explain how you do it. I've seen you do it. Explain how you do that.
Okay, so what I do is I'll say, I am not a lecturer. I'm not a what? I'm not a
lecturer.
I'm not a lecturer, which means I don't give lectures. A lecturer is somebody standing in front of the room and they're saying something. They're assuming that because they're saying it, you're hearing it. I am not a lecturer. I use a concept called natural learning. What's it called? It's called
natural learning. Natural learning.
See, institutional learning is one person talking, a whole bunch of people allegedly learning. But natural learning is play. It's having fun. Little puppies don't learn to be big dogs by going to big dog school and listening to a big dog give a monologue. Okay? Little kittens don't go to big cat school and learn how to be cats. They learn how to be cats by pouncing on each other, when they're kittens pouncing on each other. They learn how to be big dogs by when they're little puppies, they chase each other. And what you've got to learn to do is you've got to learn how to play. So we're going to play today. We're going to have a lot of fun. How many of you like fun learning better than you like boring learning? Say me. Me. Excellent. Exactly. So I get them. So now, what that means is, as we're doing natural learning, I'm going to ask a lot of questions. I'm going to ask a lot of what?
Questions.
Questions. Number two, if I make a statement, I'm going to get you to repeat it. I'm going to get you to do what?
Repeat it.
I'm going to get you to repeat it. The reason I'm getting you to repeat it is so you hear it. I already know this stuff. How many already learned this stuff? Say yes.
Yes.
That's why I'm going to get you to repeat it. And then third thing, if I begin a sentence, leave the last word off, I'm going to get you to fill in the
blanks.
Blank. Very good. Give yourselves a hand. You got the process. All right. So there they clap, and now they're enrolled. They're enrolled, and I just keep doing that over and over again. And if I tell them something that makes sense, you got. If you really want to make more money, you want to take your life to another level, you got to ask better questions so you can get better answers. Ask better what? Questions. So you can get better what?
Answers.
Excellent. And you deserve better answers. How many of you know that? Say, I do. And I literally get them to do, I call that choir director closing, right? I make them say back to me what I'm saying to them. I call that the choir director closing. Now, so think about how powerful this concept is. If you think about the laws of physics, right? You've got momentum, the law of momentum. You've got the law of inertia. Think about this is in selling, because all principles are microcosms of each other. So think about this. Momentum. The law of momentum says an object in motion will continue in motion. It will pick up speed and velocity until and unless it's acted upon by an outside force. So if I can get something going, it's easier for me to keep it going than it is to get it stopped, right? Mm-hmm. But the law of inertia says an object at rest will remain at rest until and unless it's acted upon by an outside force. So think about this. If I'm doing a presentation and people are watching me do a presentation, I have momentum, they have inertia. Mm. So they're listening to me talk for 90 minutes and they're doing nothing. And now all of a sudden, in the last 5 minutes or 15 minutes of my talk, I want to overcome the inertia that I created, and now I want them to have momentum. Like, I'm working against the laws of nature. That's like throwing bricks over my head and hoping they don't come down and crush my skull. Right? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create momentum in the beginning. If I get them responding throughout my presentation, responding in the close is just the natural continuation of that. So that's what engaging means. So I enroll, engage. The next thing I got to do is I got to educate. I got to teach them something. So you want their mind going off like popcorn. So the first thing is enroll. Second thing is engage. Third thing is educate. You got to teach them really cool stuff. And by the way, one of the coolest ways you can teach them really cool stuff is you got to don't go around repeating what you think you heard somebody else say, because most of the time it wasn't that good when the first person said it, right? So when you do your version, it's going to get worse and worse and worse. So what you do, the way I teach, I pay attention. Pay attention to the things that show up in your life and see how you navigate through them and take notes on that. Do you remember Charlie Tremendous Jones? Do you remember him or not really? Is that before your time? Okay, so Charlie Tremendous Jones was a motivational speaker back during the days of Earl Nightingale and all those guys, right? But his thing was he loved books. He loved introducing people to books. And he used to have a bookstore in our town, in Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania. But he shipped hundreds of thousands, millions of books all around the world. Charlie wrote a book called Life is Tremendous. Have you ever read that?
No.
No, you know. Okay. So, I read that when I was 21, right? And the thing that I remember from that book to this day, it was a lot of things. Charlie was just a great guy. He exemplified enthusiasm. And that's why his nickname was Charlie Tremendous Jones. So Charlie wrote this book called Life is Tremendous. And in that book, one of the things he said, he had this really cool old guy voice. And he said, when you read a book, or when you go to church and you hear a sermon, or you hear a seminar, when somebody says something that you really like, don't write down what they said. Write down what you thought of as a result of what they said. And I'm telling you, that sentence right there has made me millions of dollars because of writing down what I thought of as a result of what I heard people say. So remember I showed you this book, You Square? Yep. Remember I showed you Square, right? And I showed you my notes, right? Yep. And you got yours around.
Boom, mine's here now too.
Woo, what's up? So I showed you my notes. So when I read something, see those yellow sticky notes? Sometimes they're green, sometimes they're yellow. But you see those yellow sticky notes? Yeah. Those are my Charlie Jones thoughts. I call it Charlie Jonesing it. So what I do is when I read something that somebody said and I like the way they said it, I think, okay, why did I like that so much? Okay, I like that because, and then I figure it out. And then that's the thing I write down. I don't ever write down somebody's quote when I'm taking notes. I write down what I think of. That's how I create so much original content. You know that, and I'm not patting myself on the back, but when I talk, Like I say stuff. I don't know where it comes from, but it comes out, right? Some stuff comes out. And so that's a result of 40 years, not 40 years. How old am I? 57, almost 40 years, like 30 something years of Charlie Jonesing, listening to stuff, putting it in my own words, putting down what it means to me. And then I say stuff, people are like, oh, that's the greatest thing I've ever heard. Thank you for melting my mind. And so that's educating people, right? You want to educate people. And it's good if you can do it in epigrams. Like, there's no strength without struggle. If you can tack a couple of them together, it's like boom, boom, boom. There's no strength without struggle. There's no destiny without difficulty. There's no advancement without adversity. You got to go through some stuff to get to your stuff. And when you say, oh my goodness, that's amazing. Now, people already know that. But they feel it when you can when you can make it succinct and powerful, they can feel it, right? Mm-hmm. So educate. And then the last piece of closing, especially from the stage, is you empower people. What do you mean empower them? You empower them to take the action they desire to take. What is that? You remove all of the reasons why they can't. That's what my storytelling is all about. It's all about, most of the storytelling is about the empowering piece. I'm empowering them to take the action I know they desire to take. How do I know they desire to take? Because even if they didn't have it when they came in, first of all, if like people were in Dana Derrick's room when we were at Dream 100 Con, right? They were there because they wanted to learn how to Dream 100. So I already know that they wanted Dana's offer. I operate from the standpoint that people already desired the thing or they wouldn't even be in the room, right? And now I've got 90 minutes to build even more desire on top of their initial desire. Now they want it more. So if they're not buying, why are they not buying? They're not buying because they've got some disempowering questions in their mind. For instance, disempowering question numero uno. What if this doesn't work? So what do? I disempower the disempowering question. I take all of the power out of the disempowering question. That's the whole purpose of the story, right? So, and I'll tell them, what if it doesn't work? Well, you already know what happens if it doesn't work. You already have that. And the question is, do you want to keep living with it? So learn to ask yourself better questions instead of asking yourself, what if this doesn't work? Now, see, most people think the opposite of what if it doesn't work. Most people think the opposite of that is what if it does? Well, that's not a good question. It's not a disempowering question, but it's not empowering. Here's an empowering question. How great is my life going to be when this works? Mm-hmm. You see what I'm saying? So I'm not just taking the disempowering question and flipping it over. I'm taking the disempowering question and I'm asking a question that actually makes an empowering statement. And that's why I do the two biggest expenses close. Mm-hmm. I take all the power out of the what if it doesn't work. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
What are the two most expensive things you currently pay for? Write it down on a piece of paper. Why do I have them writing it down? That's part of the engagement. See, they've agreed to learn the way I teach. So when I tell them to write it down, they write it down. Okay? Somebody tell me, what are your two biggest things? Children, house, rent, car, insurance, college loans. Blah. Okay, great. That's great. Those are great. But how many of you would agree? That if you don't know what your biggest expenses are, your chances of minimizing or eliminating them is slim to none, and Slim has just left the building. Say yes. Right? So now I agree that if I don't know what they are, then I can't fix them. Right. Okay, cool. So I didn't hear, every now and then somebody will get the second one. Somebody will say taxes, but almost nobody says taxes. So I'll say your second biggest expense is taxes. Second biggest expense is taxes. Yeah, your second biggest expense is taxes. You say, no, taxes aren't that much. Oh, that's exactly what they want you to think. Say they tax you when you earn money. That's called
income tax.
Income tax. They tax you when you buy something with the money you earn. That's called
sales tax.
Sales tax. Oh, they just taxed you twice on the same money. Oh, snap. And then if you after you bought it and you own it, they charge you again. That's called property tax. And then if you sell it for more than you bought it for, they tax you again. That's called capital gains tax. And then when you die, they tax you again. That's called death tax and estate tax. So the average American, the average working American, how many of you work? Okay, fantastic. The average working American pays 51% in taxes. Well, one of the things that I learned a long time ago in selling insurance and investments, you can't talk about numbers and you can't talk about percentages without painting a picture. So 51%, you know what that means to people? Nothing. So what do? This is what I call like digging your thumb in the wound. Like they got stabbed in the leg. So what you do is you put your thumb in there and you move around. So like the doctor does, that hurt? Yeah, it hurts, dummy. That hurt. I thought you were a doctor, right? Of course it hurts, right? So I say 51% in taxes. That means 51 cents out of every dollar the government takes it from you. That means $5.10 out of every $10. That means $51 out of every $100. And I do it slowly enough for them to feel the pain. That means $510 out of every $1,000 you earn. That means $5,100 out of every $10,000 you earn. That means $510,000 out of every $100,000 you earn. You are paying right now $510,000 out of every $1 million you earn to the government, and you're wondering why you can't get ahead? How many of you'd like to minimize that? Say yes. Yes. Excellent. But you couldn't minimize it until you learned what it was. But here's what's amazing. The only reason I show them the second biggest expense is so that I can show them that the first biggest expense is worse. Like the second biggest expense, I want you to think about that, is the majority of their income. If you own 51% of the company, of a company stock, you control the company. So if the government takes 51% from you, they own you, right? But that's your second biggest expense. Well, if that's your second biggest expense, the first one's got to be really scary because this is like a nightmare. Oh, by the way, I know I'm a little animated too. Sorry. Most people think that a presentation is a presentation. A presentation is never a presentation. Not for those of us who are great. For those of us who are great at sales, here's what a presentation is. A presentation is a performance. You are like performing for an Oscar. You got to put everything. You got to put all of your emotion in. Why? Because emotion creates motion, right? So I tell them about the second biggest expense, so I can get to the first biggest expense. Well, what's the first biggest expense? Well, here's what I want you to do before I tell you that. Is there anybody here who can bake a chocolate cake? Why do I ask that question? One of the things that you've got to get good at when you're guiding people is before you can direct someone, sometimes you got to misdirect them. You got to misdirect them so you can show them how much they don't know. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? Yeah. So can anybody bake a chocolate cake? Okay, I can bake a chocolate cake. Are you sure it's good? I'm sure it's good. Okay, fantastic. Could you teach me to bake a chocolate cake? I've never baked a chocolate cake in my life. Could you teach me to bake I can teach you to bake a chocolate cake. Okay, fantastic. So what I think I hear you saying, notice how I make it them, not me. Because if I make it the person in the audience, then everybody can relate to them. I'm not making it me. So what I think I hear you saying is that you believe that one intelligent person can teach another intelligent person something they know how to do. Is that fair? How many of y'all heard her say that? Okay, I heard it. Fantastic. So they didn't really hear her say that. They heard me say that she said that, right? Okay. Now, what I've done is I've taken the next thing and I've reduced it to as simple as baking a chocolate cake. Mm-hmm. Right? So what is your biggest expense? Well, your biggest expense is not knowing how to make $1 million a year. I want you to write down on your piece of paper how much money you made last year. And let's say you made $120,000, right? And most people didn't make $120,000, but let's say $120,000. So right above that $120,000, I want you to write down $1 million. And I want you to subtract $120,000 from the million. How much you got left? $880,000. That's your biggest expense. That's how much you paid life last year for not knowing how to make $1 million. And the question you've got to answer is, do you want to pay life next year $880,000 for still not knowing how to make $1 million? You may be thinking, well, but how do I know? Does it stand to reason that I've taught other people how to make millions of dollars? So what I said about you was you taught other people how to make millions of dollars. How many of you know that Alex and Layla Hormozi are better off making their $10 million a year than they were sleeping on a gym floor? How many of you know that Brandon and Kaylin Pullen are better off now, that Kaylin can go to the grocery store and she doesn't have to wonder about which card to use or what groceries she has to put back? See, Russell did not do them a disservice by selling them. He did them a great service by selling these broke people a $25,000 coaching program. And so now they're like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. So when they see, now what happens when they see the $18,000 price, when they're not comparing the $18,000 to the car they want, they're not comparing it to the down payment on the house, they're comparing the $18,000 that they're paying you to the $880,000 that they paid life last year for not knowing how to do what you could teach them how to do. Boom.
So good.
That's why you tell stories. You tell stories to empower them. How do you empower people? You disempower their disempowering questions.
It's amazing.
Truly, you're not that amazed by that, are you?
I am. I sat there and watched it. I love it. I think, are you okay if I show that clip in Panic Live to everybody in this video and just like plug it in right here so they can all watch it? Okay, so Myron's going to let you guys the magic. See his 30 minutes and the stories he told. You'll see this one he's talking about in the other ones, but you'll be able to see that what he did, and which got another, what was the total number? 2.2
$3,852,000, 214 more sales
Myron,
at $18,000.
so that many more people who'd already, like, again, I did a pretty good job. I spent 3 days.
No, it was a great job. You did a great job.
For him to come back and get that many more, like, it is insane. And so that's what we call repitch. And since then, everyone you know has been begging you, can you go to my event, Myron, repitch?
All right. So I want to bring Myron up today because he is one of the best storytellers and one of the best presenters I've ever seen. And I wanted to ask him some questions to help some of you guys resolve your concerns about moving on to the next step. And for those who are already there, give you some ideas about how to tell stories the way that Myron does, which is going to be awesome. So first thing I wanted you to talk about, which would be a lot of fun, is, or do you need the whiteboard? Maybe I should bring it back up. I didn't even ask you if that was.
That'd be epic if I could use it.
I'm so
But
sorry.
it's okay. It's
I'm
okay.
fired.
Hey.
I'll get it moved up while you're talking.
Okay, cool.
So the first question I want you to talk about.
The first one.
You don't need for the first one? Okay. Is moral obligation. You want to talk about that with everybody for a little bit?
Absolutely. So you have to understand, how many of you, and be honest, this is not really about impressing people. This is about making a difference, like making your life count. How many of you have a hard time with the concept of selling? Come on, keep it real with me, my people. Okay? And I told you guys when I first started selling, it took me 1.5 years to make my first sale. But one of the reasons it was hard for me is because I wasn't really convinced that selling was something good to do for people. You know, I thought in my mind, I was programmed by what I call the cultural hypnotic societal mechanism to think that somehow that selling is doing something to people. But the wisest, wealthiest man who ever lived, if he were alive today, he would be a multi-trillionaire. He said, if you have something good, everybody say something good. If you have something good, you have a moral obligation to sell it to as many people as possible. How many of y'all know who I'm talking about? King Solomon, that's right. In Proverbs chapter 14, verse 26, here's what it says. He that withholdeth the corn, the people shall curse him, but blessing shall be upon the head of him that selleth it. I want you to think about that. If you've got something good, you've got a moral obligation to sell it to as many people as possible. Think about this. Do you think Alex Hormozy and Layla would be better off if Russell had not done everything in his power to sell them his $50,000 inner circle coaching program? Would Alex be better off working in like 6 gyms and Layla selling gym memberships? If he wouldn't have done everything in his power to sell them that. Kaylin would probably still be in Publix like trying to figure out which card had enough money on it so she didn't have to take stuff out of. See, he helped them. He served them. Selling is serving. So don't buy into the lie that Hollywood and the government tries to perpetrate on us, that when you sell something to somebody, you're doing something bad to them. I'm going to tell you something. I've never been in a room where one person has impacted that many people to become millionaires and deca-millionaires. Your best chance at creating wealth is to sign up for the 10X program. The 2 Comma Club 10X program. I'm in the inner circle. I signed up for it. Like, I'm not missing that, right? I mean, $1 million is great, but 10 is at least 10 times better. So anyway, I'm not real good at spelling, but I can do math, right? So when Russell says, if you haven't signed up for that yet this morning, like, don't miss out on that. The reason he's doing so much to get you to do it, he doesn't need your money. Because he has a moral obligation to change your family for generations, and he's doing everything in his power to do that. So that's what the moral obligation is about.
All right, next thing we talk about is, let me flip that over. You guys all get this?
Oh, y'all didn't get it?
MyronGoldenConsulting.com/FHL2018.
MyronGolden.com/FHL2018.
All right. Okay, next we'll talk about are different types of people. And when I was talking to Myron last week, he told me the story, and I was like, can you please come share this? This was like the coolest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, you know what's really interesting? Like, I said this the other day when I was doing my presentation. What does a tree have to do to bear apples? All it has to do is be an apple tree. See, in life, you don't get what you want, you get what you are. Here's how God set it up. Everything reproduces after its own tree. After its own kind. You will never see an orange growing on an apple tree. You'll never see an apple growing on an orange tree. How many of you would like to have 3,000 people who paid you $1,000 to come to your event? Yes? Okay. How many of you would like to have 100 people buy your $18,000 program, right? You don't get what you want, you get what you are. There are 4 categories of people out there in the marketplace. You've got freeple people. You know who freeple people are, don't you? They're the people who want everything for free. But if you are freeple people, you will never be able to sell anybody anything because it's against you'll have too much internal conflict. The next level is cheapo people, right? They want anything as long as it's cheap, right? They go through life telling themselves the lie that they can't afford it. So since they believe the lie that they can't afford it, they also believe that other people can't afford it. So let me just like totally destroy the myth of I can't afford it. Everybody ready? Say I'm ready. Okay. People don't buy what they can afford. People buy the things they want the most. Do you want to change your family's life? Do you want to take epic world-class vacations? Do you want to impact the world in a great way? Then what you've got to do is stop being freeple and stop being cheaple and level up so you can learn how to use your mouth and your mind to create the wealth that your family deserves and you desire. That makes sense? Everyone say yes?
Yeah.
So if you and this is not me saying I have no convincing blood in me. Like I don't want to convince anybody anything. Like if you're not sharp enough to see that $10 million is more than you're making now, then maybe I just can't help you, right? But there's freeple people, there's cheapo people, and see here's the lie that cheapo people believe, or here's the reality about cheapo people that they don't realize. That the only thing that perpetuates poverty is the expectation of poverty. What do I mean by that? See, cheapo people and freeple people ask the wrong question. If you change the question you ask, if you already haven't signed up to go on the cruise with us and be at the luncheon with us and all the rest of that, if you haven't already done that, because you're asking yourself the wrong question. Here's the question you're asking yourself. What if it doesn't work? No, seriously, I want you to think about that. You're saying, well, but what if I pay Russell $1,800 a month and it doesn't work? What if I pay him $18,000 and it doesn't work? No, that's not the question. See, you already know what you're already doing already isn't working. So the real question that you should ask is what? What if this works? What if it works? How much better will I be able to take care of my family when this works? How much better is life going to be when this works? I'm going to tell you something. Hey, folks, I'm going to keep it real. I grew up poor. I mean, like, my parents never bought a brand new car the whole time any of me and my 6 brothers were living in their house our whole lives, because 7 boys can eat a lot of food, right? They never bought a brand new car. I didn't even know people bought brand new cars. I remember when my brothers got jobs selling cars, I thought they were going to go broke. Nobody buys new cars, right? And what I want you to understand is I had polio as an infant. There were times in my life where I couldn't get a job. I don't know if I should tell y'all that or not, but we were poor. After I first made this beautiful girl, we were broke. It was bad. I'm going to tell you something. There was nothing I wouldn't do to change my family's life. The first time I got a chance to take my family to Hawaii, we stayed there for a whole month, and we made up our mind we weren't coming back until we were sick of Hawaii. How much is that worth? So don't ask the question, what if it doesn't work? Ask the question, what if it does? How much better is my life going to be when this works? This is going to be so great. It's really interesting. And it's really interesting that the expectation of poverty or a focus on poverty, how it creates poverty. I'll say this and then I'll let Russell and you guys decide whether you want me to tell you the rest of it, but I'm going to tell you something that's amazing. The very first temptation in the history of the world, in the Garden of Eden with Adam and Eve, very first temptation. Are you ready for this? It was the temptation to focus on lack. It was what? I know y'all are going to say, come on, Myron, that's a little much, isn't it? Right? Do y'all want me to share that with you real quick or not really? Okay, is that okay?
Yeah.
Just real quick. So, God told Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, he said, of every tree of the garden, every tree of the garden, you may freely eat. Now let me ask you a question about those two words, every and freely. Are those abundance words or lack words? Those are abundance words. And then he said, of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, don't eat off that tree. How many trees is that? One. So they had everything freely, and they only lacked one thing. And here's where the tree of knowledge of good and evil was. It was in the middle of the garden, right? And all these other trees were all around here. And so the devil comes and says, hey, Eve, didn't God say you can't eat off of every tree of the garden? You know what he did? He took away one word and then added the word not. And she said, And then she said, we may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden. She took away two words. And it says, and when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, desires to make one wise, she took of the fruit thereof and did eat, gave also to her husband with her, and he did eat. Here's what I want you to see. In order for Adam and Eve to even get to the tree of knowledge of good and evil, they had to walk past all of their abundance to get to their lack. And right now in your life, you have to walk past all of your abundance to get to your lack. The reason lack exists is because you're focused, like the abundance and the lack, they're both there, but you get the one you focus on. Don't focus on lack because it perpetuates lack. So anyway, feeble people, cheaple people. See, I lost my place. Feeble people, cheaple people, and then you've got feeble people. Feeble people are people who are willing to pay a fee. If you're willing to pay a fee, obviously you're here, right? So you're willing to pay a fee, so we know at least you're feeble people, right? Everybody here is feeble people. Give yourselves a hand. Yeah. But how many of you want to attract the absolute best customers possible for your best offerings ever so you can change people's lives and change the world? Say me. Then you deserve to become people. Say, what's people? That's people who are willing to pay a premium for the things they get. How many of y'all ready to transform your lives and become people? Say me. Yeah. All right, you're in the right place at the right time. Those are the four kinds of people. Don't forget, you get what you are, not what you want.
That's amazing. I want to actually share a story about that. So how many of you guys know Justin and Tara Williams in our community? All right, they weren't able to make it to this event because they had their own event, bad scheduling, but they came to the very first Funnel Hacking Live, and it was funny, they told me on their drive, they drove there from their home, they were like, all right, this is the deal. When we get to the hotel, we're putting our wallets in the room when we come down because we're not buying anything. And they're like, okay. So they drove there, got the whole thing there, sit in the room, and the very first, or whatever day, we made a presentation for coaching, and they're like, fine. And so they ran to the room, got the thing, came back. And it's funny, they came to the very first meeting, and it was funny because they made this progression really, really quickly from Freeple to people.
Cheaple, feeple, and preeple.
People to preeple. They came in preeple.
They became preeple.
So they came in preeple, they became preeple. They came to the event, and I remember the very first time we're sitting there, and they do a real estate coaching business, and they were selling like a $2,000 thing, and they were kind of struggling and everything. And I was like, you know what you should do? You should sell a $25,000 coaching program. And like, we can't do that. I'm like, why not? They're like, because we're struggling selling our $2,000 thing. And I was like, and they're like, no one would pay us $25,000. I'm like, I'm pretty sure they would. Like, no, people don't pay $25,000 for coaching, you guys. And I smiled, I looked around the room and I said, how many of you guys who are in this room pay $25,000 for this coaching program? And everyone raised their hands. And I'm like, you should be raising your hand. And they raised their hands. I said, like, you guys have done it. Now that you've seen it, you can believe it. And they're like, oh my gosh. So they went that night to their hotel room. They sent out an email to their list, a little tiny list of time, and said, we're launching a $25,000 coaching program. They didn't even have a phone, like didn't do any Alex Hormozy phone sales, nothing. They just had a link to a form with a $25,000 price tag. They sent the email out. Next day they came down and they're like, we had 7 people give us 25 grand last night. Woo! And then by that night it was 10. Next day it was 14. And by the end of the week they had 18 people gave them $25,000. As soon as they believed it, then they were able to attract it.
That's so good.
So.
And if they would not have made that transition in them, they could not have helped their people make that transition in themselves. Yeah. Does that make sense, everyone? Yes?
Good Another cool thing on top of that, so we have our 2 Comma Club award, and then we have our 8-figure award. So they made their, again, real estate flipping. They have like their 7-figure flippers, their 8, and then they launched their 8-figure flippers, and like they're following it, and they're bringing their people, and it's just like, you got to go there to get other people to come there too.
Absolutely.
It's really, really cool.
Absolutely.
All right, next story, one from Myron. Do you guys love story time with Myron? So fun. All right, this one he told us at Inner Circle. There's an eagle and it's amazing, and I'm just gonna set up with that and let Myron take it from here.
So
good.
You know, there's laws of the universe, right? There's the law of polarity. Everything, there's positive and negative to everything. Everything has two sides. That's the law of polarity. One of the laws, there's a law of momentum. An object in motion will continue in motion until it's acted upon by an outside force. Great, all that's great. But there's a law that I don't think is in the physics. It's real, but I don't think they've discovered it yet. Maybe I discovered it. It's called the law of advancement. The law of what? Yes. How many of you would like to advance? Say yes? Yes. Okay, fantastic. So the law of advancement works like this. And it's really kind of a simple principle, but as soon as I show this to you, you will instantaneously know that it's true. Here's what it is. In nature, in what? In nature, before anything can go up, it has to go down. Like, you can't find an exception to that. Say, what do you mean? Look, okay, like take this right here. We're gonna call that little dot right there, we're gonna call that dot a seed. What is it? It's a
seed.
Talk to me, everybody, what is it?
Seed.
It's a seed. And here's what that seed says. That seed is sitting there thinking, I wanna be a tree. Nah, you don't wanna be a tree. I wanna be a tree, I wanna be a tree, I wanna be a tree. But before that little bitty seed can grow up and be a big, strong tree, what does it have to do? Somebody tell me, shout it out. Okay, it has to grow, something else, what else? Just name stuff. All of that. But I'm gonna show you the first thing it has to do. Here's what it is. The very first thing it has to do is it has to go down into the ground, and once it gets down in the ground, here's what it's gotta do. It's gotta die, but it's gotta do more than that. Y'all ready? It has to be willing to cease to be a seed. And in order for you to become everything you can become, you must be willing to stop being what you have been so you can become all that you can be. And it goes down into the ground, and it dies, and it stops being a seed. It's no longer a seed, and then it develops a root system, it grows up, it becomes a tree. Let's say this tree is growing on the edge of a cliff. One day, Mama Eagle and Daddy Eagle are flying by. You know, eagles like to live high, so there's this tree on top of this cliff. And Mama Eagle says, you know I'm gonna have some little eaglets, don't you? No, baby, why didn't you tell me? I wanted to surprise you, but we're gonna need a new nest. Oh, baby, how do you like that tree over there? I love that tree, right? So he says, okay, I'm gonna go build you a new nest. And so he builds her a nest. Mama Eagle lays these little eggs, and she sits on them until they become little eaglets. And every day, Mama Eagle and Daddy Eagle, they take off. And they're flying. They fly out and they come back with food, and they come back with fur. They come back with all this cool stuff. And then about a couple days into this, one of the little eaglets says, Mommy? Yeah, baby. Can I learn how to fly today? Not today, baby. Not today, but soon enough. Every day, Mommy, can I learn? Not today, baby. Can I learn how to fly? Okay, tomorrow I'm going to teach you how to fly. And they're so excited, all those eaglets, they can't sleep that night. Tomorrow we're gonna learn how to fly. We're gonna be able to fly like Mom and Dad. This is gonna be so great. We're gonna be able to fly. And the next morning, Mama Eagle gets up, says, y'all ready to learn how to fly? Can I go first? Can I go first? Okay, get on my back. Baby Eagle gets on Mama's back. Mama goes, Mommy, higher, Mommy, higher. This is so much fun. This is great. And all of a sudden, Mommy goes, Baby Eagle goes, Mommy, what are you doing? I don't know how to fly yet. What are you doing? And then right before the baby eagle hits the ground, Mama goes, catches it, flies it back. Baby says, what are you doing? And he gets back to the nest, and the little brother says, was it fun? Was it fun? Whatever you do, don't get on Mama's back, man. She crazy. Mama crazy. The next eagle, all of them that night are like, the first night they were up because they were excited. The next night they're up because they're worried. I don't want to be an eagle. I want to be a chicken. I don't want to fly. I don't want to fly. And next morning, get on my back. No, mommy, no, man. Get on my. If I tell you what was that, yes, man. Woo, 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 woo. No, mommy, no, no. And by the way, when Russell's flying you up there teaching you how to make $10 million, you're gonna be like, no, Russell, that's too hard. Woo, 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 no. Right before you hit the ground. And then the next day, it happens again, and then she turns over. Oh, mommy, I told you I'm ready to wait tonight. I'm not doing this anymore. And all of a sudden, the wind catches the wings just right. That baby starts floating. I believe I can fly. I believe I can touch the sky. The eagle learns to fly by falling. And even an eagle, before it goes up, it has to go down. But you know what? Here's what human beings do. They live in a nest. That nest is called the circle of sameness. And when it's our turn to learn to fly, we start falling. Do all human beings learn to fly as high as they possibly can? Nope. Do you know why? Because we have a choice. Eagles don't have a choice. What percentage of eagles learn how to fly? 100%. But what percentage of people learn to max out their potential? Not nearly enough. So the anticipation of impact is the thing we're afraid of. People say, I'm afraid of falling. You're not afraid of falling. You're afraid that you're going to hit the ground. And so while we're falling, instead of allowing the wind to catch our wings, we grab onto the lowest hanging branch. We crawl back up into the circle of sameness called the comfort zone, and we live the rest of our lives there. If before they build a building, they've got to dig a hole in the ground and put a foundation down, if a seed has to go on the ground and stop being a seed, if an airplane has flaps that have to go down, anything that goes up has to go down. If you are pretending that you want your income to go up and you're not willing to allow your bank balance to go down, you are kidding yourself. If you're serious about advancing, don't even wait until I'm done with this presentation. Don't wait until Garrett comes up. Like, change your family's life. Make that decision now. Everybody got it? Say yes. Law of advancement.
Need some water?
You know what? That's a really good idea. I'm glad you thought of that.
I'm thirsty. I'm not even talking, man. Oh, I love that. All right, I got one more cool story I want him to share with you guys. While he's getting his drink of water, though, for those of you guys who are on the edge, like, anytime you're ready, feel free to stand up and go back. There's people already going in there now, filling it out. Like, the same thing yesterday, get the form, fill it out, take it back there. If you don't have a form, they've got some back there as well. But I want you guys to understand, like, this is something that everything Myron's talked about, like, this is my moral obligation. The reason why I'm here, the reason why I kill myself, the reason why I created 6 presentations, the reason why I've done all this stuff, spent over $1.5 million to get you in this room, because I want your guys' lives to change. Okay, and my moral obligation is to do that. So I'm trying to bring everything possible to help take you guys to the next step and the next level. And so when you guys are ready for that, if you're still on the fence, like, now is the time to get up and feel free to go over there and get started, because as soon as this break is over, we're closing it down for at least a few months as we figure out for lunch and everything like that happening. So, all right, we got one more story. You guys ready for the last one? This last one is about the 2 biggest expenses you have in your life.
And what's really interesting, like, unfortunately, in the educational system, that we never learn the most important math. You know what I mean? We learn how to do decimals and fractions and algebra. How many of you have used algebra in your adult life? Okay, a couple of you, right? How many of you don't use algebra in your adult life at all? Exactly. But you had to learn it. Why didn't they teach us the rule of 72 in school, in high school, in elementary school? We could have understood it in the 5th grade, but why didn't they teach us the rule of 72? Because the objective of education is not learning. Anyway, that's a whole nother conversation. So I'm gonna ask you a question. I want everybody to get a pen and paper out. I want you to write down the answer to this question I'm about to ask you. Everybody ready? Say, I'm ready. Okay, so write it down. Here's the question. I want you to write down your answer. Right now, in your life, What are the 2 most expensive things you pay for? I want you to write them down. Don't put 10 things on the list. Don't put 80 things on the list. 2. How many?
2.
Talk to me, y'all. How many?
2.
2. Put 2 things on the list. Y'all got them? Okay, how many had your house on there? Okay, I figured it'd be a couple of you. How many of you have your car on there? Student loans? Okay, this is my favorite. How many of y'all have children on there? Okay, I do that. Okay, so none of those are your biggest expenses. I'm gonna tell you what your 2 biggest expenses are. Everybody ready? So your 2 biggest expenses are, okay, I'm gonna cheat, Russell. I'm gonna tell them number 2 first. The second biggest expense you have in your life is taxes. You say, the taxes aren't that bad. Oh yeah, they are. So if you're a W-2 wage earner, you're paying 51% of every dollar you make in taxes. Because I want you to think about it. That's $5. That's 51 cents out of every dollar. It's $5.10 out of every $10. That's $51 out of every $100. That's $5,100. That's $510 out of every 1,000, $5,100 out of every 10,000, $51,000 out of every 100,000. That's $510,000 out of every $1 million you make, you're giving to the government. You say, no, I'm in a 22% tax bracket. See, but that's why it's a sneak attack. See, they tax you when you earn it. That's called what? Income tax. They tax you when you buy something. That's called what? Sales tax. See, you didn't even know you just got double taxed on the same money. They tax you if you sell the thing for more than you bought it for. That's called capital gains tax. They tax you while you own it. That's called property tax. And God forbid that you should die, because they're really going to tax you then. Right? So you're paying 51% in taxes. So how many of you would like to reduce the amount you pay in taxes, or at least have a bigger 49% left over? Say yes. Yeah. Okay, that's why you deserve to get it to $10 million. Now I'm going to tell you your biggest expense. But before I do, I want to ask a question. Is there anybody in the audience that can bake a chocolate cake? Okay, ma'am, what is your name? What is it? Jody? Jodine. Hey, Jodine, how are you? I'm better now that you're talking to me. This is so cool. Okay, anyway, Jodine, let me ask you a question. Are your chocolate cakes good? They're really good, huh? Oh, snap, this is gonna be great. So your chocolate cakes are good. Do you believe that you could teach me to bake a chocolate cake? Okay, so yes? Okay, so does it make sense to everybody in this room that one intelligent person can teach another intelligent person something they know how to do? If that makes sense to you, shout yes. Okay, perfect. Just want to make sure I was in the right room. How many of y'all would agree that you're intelligent? Say yes. Okay, how many of y'all would agree that Russell's intelligent? Yes. Okay, so I'm going to tell you what your biggest expense is. The biggest expense in your life is ignorance about how to make $10 million. No, let's don't laugh at this one. I mean, it may sound funny, but it's really not funny. It's like, this is time to come get your family and take them to safety. Y'all ready? I want you to write down, I want everybody to write down on your sheet of paper how much money you made last year. Whatever the number is, I don't care what it is. Let's assume that you're a relatively high income earner in the United States of America, and let's say last year you made $80,000, right? So you made $80,000, and let's say that for some reason you're not as good as the other people and all the other stories you tell yourself, and let's say, I don't know, you don't have as much time, and let's say Russell can't get you to 10 million. Let's say he can only get 10% that far and you get to $1 million, right? So if Russell can only get you to $1 million, what we're gonna do is we're gonna write 1 million up here, right? And we're gonna subtract 80,000. So we're gonna end up with how much? That's right, $920,000. Now that is your largest expense. That's how much you, everybody say me, that's how much you paid life last year for not knowing how to make $1 million. If you add the other zero, which there's no doubt in my mind Russell can get me there. If you add the other zero, it's $9,980,000 you paid life last year for not knowing how to make $10 million. So here's the question is not, do you have $18,000? The question is not, do you have $1,800? The question is not, or do you have time? The question is not, can you afford it? The question is not, will my wife let me do it? Will my husband let me do it? Here's the only question you have to answer. Everybody ready? Say, I'm ready. Do I want to pay life $980,000 or $9,920,000 or $9,920,000 next year like I did last year? If your answer is no, I don't want to pay that anymore, don't say anything. If you're not on that cruise with us already, get up from your seat right now and go get your application filled out. Stop paying the biggest expense of all, ignorance. It's your turn to win.
But we're talking about, because I know a lot of people watch this may not ever do a stage presentation. They may never have a chance for a repitch. Like at Grant Cardone's event, they allowed me to come back and do a repitch, which was cool. But most places don't let you do that. But like in the context of, let's say we're doing webinars or auto webinars, I know how we're using now, but how would you use something like this, like a repitch in an actual webinar sequence?
That's a really great question. I think one of the things you could do is you could just do like the day after, even the day after a webinar, do like a Q&A. Do a Q&A, and every time somebody asks you a question, it gives you an opportunity to repitch, to answer that question. Because here's one of the things I notice about people that have questions. In fact, you might take this is a great idea. You take all of the questions that people ask during the webinar, and the next day, like you answer as many as you can, and the next day you say, look, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take some time tomorrow at such and such a time. I'm going to answer all these questions. Or you don't even say it on the webinar. You just send them an email and say, hey, I had these great questions that people ask, blah, blah, blah. And you build it up. I'm going to answer these questions tonight that are going to help you get to whatever your goal is of the webinar, right? And then you go back on there, because here's what I discovered. If there's one person asking a question, there's at least 10 people that have it. Mm-hmm. So if you answer it for that one, you're answering it for 10 more people also. So that's one of the things that I would recommend for doing a repitch. And I mean, even just sending out the replay is good. But I think if you just go live again and just maybe go live in a different platform, go live on a Facebook Live. You did your webinar on a webinar, go live on a Facebook Live to answer the question. You say, hey, I did this webinar last night and people ask me all these great questions that I want to answer. And man, I think they'll help you a lot. If you're there, and send that out to the people who showed up for the webinar, the people who didn't show up for the webinar, and then get on and answer those questions by telling stories that disempower their disempowering beliefs, I think it'd be ginormous once again.
Yeah. It's funny. Somebody told me the other day, they'd done a webinar and they did a bunch of them. They said, Russell, in your book, you say that you usually double the sales of the webinar after the webinar is over from replays and stuff like that. And like, I never believed it. I never did it. And finally this time I did an actual sequence, and they literally did more sales from the replay sequence than before.
Absolutely.
And a big piece of it is because of that. Like it's the people that buy the first time, a lot of times it's people that come in and they're emotionally charged, they're hottest buyers, and they get excited and they'll go and buy. And there's other people, they get off the webinar and they sit at home at night and they're sitting in bed and they're thinking about it and they're talking to their spouse about it and they contemplate, and they're like the more logical thinkers, they're trying to figure things out. And coming back with that second thing gives you the ability now to respond to those questions differently and be able to touch people in a different way that they may not have said yes to the first time just because of whatever it is. I mean, all of us function differently. We process things in our minds differently. Mm-hmm. So for me, I talked about this a little bit at the event last weekend. Like my first patch is like, how do I sell people emotionally? Because most people buy emotionally. And after we've done that and we got those people out of minutes, like now let's come back and logically explain to the next set of people. And then the last set is like urgency and scarcity. So when I look at my sequences, it's like for me, the webinar or the stage pitch is the emotional sell. Then the next part is the logical sell. And then the last part is like, okay, urgency and scarcity is taken away from them because that's the best way to get someone off the fences. If I lose, it's gone forever. And that's like the path I always take people down. So anyway, it's
good stuff. Good stuff.
Well, first off,
I'll tell you what, the 30-day blueprint was great. The 30-day blueprint book, 30days.com, that was one of the best promotions of all times. And one of the greatest products of all times, too. That product is, wow.
Oh, it's amazing. The other day I was sitting in bed, I finally started reading it because it's been chaos in my life. And I started reading it. I was like, oh my gosh.
This is good. I know, right?
Yeah, it's like by Russell Brunson. I didn't write anything but the title. It's all the rest of our community doing the best thing. It's amazing. So. Well, Myron, man, I appreciate you jumping on tonight and sharing this stuff. I think everything from price marinade, repitching to the story, like so much amazing things you were willing to share here. It's going to be huge for people. And just grateful for you. And every interaction I've ever had with you, man, it's been amazing since day one. And you are so much fun to watch on stage. I know you're going to be back on Fun Like Live again this year. You're probably going to just be in there every year from now on. In fact, I'm going to just give it to you.
Won't hurt my feelings none.
You can run the whole thing. So it'll be awesome. Anyway, thanks, man, for sharing everything, being willing to share, and always just give all the time, man. It's truly impressive to watch what you do. So
absolutely my pleasure, man. Thank you for all that you do. Somebody was asking me today, I'm going to end with this, my 3 favorite books, like other than the books I've written, of course, right? Because that was not on the table. The Bible's number 1. Expert Secrets is number 2. U Squared is number 3.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, thank you.
Absolutely. I just, we have a mutual admiration society. I love watching you think. I love watching you teach. It's mind-blowing. I can see how deep you've gone. Like your well is not likely to run dry anytime in the next century. So I appreciate you, bro.